week 2 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few wide receivers. I have his sleeper options this week. First receiver, Greg Dortch of the Arizona Cardinals. Dortch available 90% of fantasy leagues, and he's always had some decent value as Dortch when he gets playing time, and that would Zay Jones, who's been suspended and is going to be suspended in the next few weeks. And Michael Wilson, he did score a touchdown in week 1, but besides that, didn't do much. Greg Dortch went out there and had a solid game for PPR owners. 6 catches, 47 yards on 8 targets with a jet sweep for 4-yard rush as well. So Greg Dortch, he's an underneath slot receiver with good hands, and we've seen some decent games out of him over the last few seasons, and him and Kyler Murray definitely have a good rapport. So this week in a matchup where there could be a potential shootout with the Arizona Cardinals and division rival the Los Angeles Rams, I think Greg Dortch, once again, it wouldn't be far-fetched if he gets double-digit fantasy points in PPR leagues. So with a couple wide receivers banged up and possibly not playing this week, we know Puka Nacua already on injured reserve. T. Higgins, he might not play once again. I think Greg Dortch could fill in those deeper leagues and be a sleeper option. Next receiver is Alec Pierce of the Indianapolis Colts. I know Josh Downs, he could return this week where he's been limited in practice so far. And Alec Pierce, he was a pretty decent pickup off the wire this week. Added in 19% of fantasy leagues, but still out there in 79% of leagues, surprisingly. So him and Anthony Richardson hooked up on a couple deep balls in that week 1 loss versus the Texans. And he had one for a touchdown, 3 catches, 125 receiving yards, and a TD in that one. So I know it was a little bit fluky that he had 3 catches amounting to 125 yards on only 3 targets as Alec Pierce. But he was a highly touted pick a couple years ago from this Colt team. And I know they got Mitchell as well in the NFL draft this season. Obviously, Michael Pittman, Josh Downs over there, but I still believe Alec Pierce, for the most part, he's going to be in 3-4 wide receiver sets and be a deep ball option for this Indianapolis Colts team. I'm not saying to go out there and start him in your basic 10-12 team formats, but someone in deeper leagues as a sleeper who it could just take one deep ball for him to get his day, especially with the Green Bay Packers where their secondary is definitely leaky, and we saw last week that's Philadelphia Eagles going up and down the field. I think Alec Pierce is a decent sleeper option, and the third and final wide receiver I have as a sleeper is Demarcus Robinson of the Los Angeles Rams. And now with Puka Nacua out 4+ weeks with knee injury, Robinson was a pretty decent pickup off the wire, added in 14% of fantasy leagues, still out there in 80% of leagues is Robinson. So week 1 after Puka went down towards the end of the second quarter, he finished with 4 catches, 42 yards. And last season, towards the end of the year, Demarcus Robinson had a good role with this Ram team, and he finished the year with 26 catches, 371 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns on 39 targets. So this week, in a good matchup, potential shootout at the Arizona Cardinals, I think Demarcus Robinson could be a solid number 4 or 5 receiver and a deeper league flex option. That's a few wide receivers I have as sleepers for week 2 of the fantasy football season.